Good afternoon to everybody. I'd like to introduce the second part of the digitalization part of the conference. We have a very distinguished panel of people who are going to give us a very interesting view on some developments in this sector. I just wanted to start off by saying that when I started in the container shipping business, we had the mail, which came every day, and the post, which we opened. And our main urgent means of communication were telexes, if some people will remember what those are. So I guess to some extent, it's a surprise to see that the shipping industry still operates today by using bills of lading, which are pieces of paper sent around the world. And I'm not going to say exactly how long I've been in the industry, but I guess it sounds like it's ripe for change. And I think the panel today are going to explain to us how this is happening already and how it's going to evolve over the next few years. What I will do is briefly introduce the panelists and then ask them to give an introduction individually. So today we have Thomas Bagg, the CEO of the DCSA, the Digital Container Shipping Association. We have Fabio Luciani, who's a logistics coordinator with BRF, who is a logistics company. Fabio Poya, a logistics specialist at BRF as well. Gadi Ruschin, co-founder and CEO of Wave BL. And Andre Simha, Global Chief Digital and Information Officer at MSC, Mediterranean Shipping Company. So if I can start at the top of my list here with, if I can ask Thomas Bagg to give us an introduction of himself and an opening statement, please.
Thanks, Mark. My name is Thomas Bagg. I'm the CEO of Digital Container Shipping Association, or DCSA as we call it. DCSA is an association established by 9 of the world's 10 largest container shipping companies. And we represent about 70 to 80% of the world's containerized trade. And we have a mission to create a digital foundation for international trade. And very naturally, we start by looking at the processes of our members, namely the shipping companies. We were founded in 2019, and we operate as a non-for-profit organization. That means all our work is published open source, or any participants involved in international trade can go on our website and pick up all our work free of charge. And we do that simply to cultivate the digital ecosystem around container shipping.
Thank you, Thomas. If I can move on to Fabio Luciani. Fabiano, if you can just, hi, Fabiano. It's great.
Hello. So,
if you can just explain a little bit about yourself and about BRF and your role.
Okay. I'm the logistic manager in BRF. I'm in charge of the shipping documents. At the moment, our company is attending more than 150 countries. BRF was founded in 1934. Is one of the largest global food companies, presenting more than 150 countries with more than 100,000 employees. And our mission is to offer a better life for everyone. In my current role, I'm responsible for leading a team of 36 people, and we handle and issue about 24,000 shipping documents per month to support all our shipments all the world.
Thank you, Fabiano. Fabio, you're a colleague of Fabiano's. Can you just introduce yourself, please?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Mark. Warming greetings from Brazil. My name is Fabio. I am a coordinator of technology logistics projects at BRF. First of all, thank you all the organizers, the sponsors, and panelists for this opportunity to discuss about a little bit about our experience and also our expectations about the digitalization of documents. As Fabiano mentioned, our company BRF is one of the largest food companies in the world. and it's present over 150 countries. One important point is that our company have about $10 billion of investment for the next 10 years, anchored on innovation and financial discipline. So one of the important pillars of this growth is the digital transformation to make this growth sustain with, of course, operational efficiency. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Very interesting. So Gadi Ruschin, co-founder of WaveBL.
Hi, Gadi Ruschin here, CEO and co-founder of Wave. Thank you very much, Mark. So I represent WaveBL. WaveBL is a company which created a digital documents exchange platform, which means that we have created an electronic bill of lading as well as many other documents used in trade. MSC, which of course Andre will present, is already offering WaveBL as a part of their digital solution to their customers around the world. We were founded back in 2015, but then of course we got into the product development. Last year, we were launching the service or the network, and today it is already holding hundreds of customers all around the world. Just to give you some sense of the growth of digitization in the industry, if last June we had around 20-something transactions through the entire month of June, today specifically, which is just a normal day, there is nothing special about other than the panel, of course. So we already completed 535 transactions now as we speak, and it's only 6 p.m. So of course, digitization is growing very fast these days. Thank you.
Thanks, Gadi. Very interesting. Finally, Andre Simha of MSC.
Well, thank you very much for the. Obviously, the webcam decided not to show. That's technology for you.
Yeah, no, people are coming and disappearing every now and then in this panel.
I think there we go.
Oh,
hi, Mark. Thanks for having me. Yes, Andre Simha, that's me. I'm the Chief Digital and Information Officer at MSC, and I'm also the chairman of the supervisory board of the Digital Container Shipping Association, of which we have Thomas, the CEO, on this panel today. And I've spent the last 34 years at MSC, and today I'm still responsible for leading and executing the company's overall digital transformation and innovation strategy. In this role, of course, we explore with the teams the latest digital technologies such as blockchain, IoT, smart containers, of course, and most interesting, electronic documentation. And I think today we're going to be talking about the EBL, something that we've been involved in for the past 2 years or so, together with Gadi's team. And we believe that that digitization of the industry must happen. And starting with the documents themselves, I think we have a good story to tell today. So I'll let you take the lead, Mark.
Okay. Well, look, this is not an area I have a huge expertise in, other than that I know it exists and I know it's definitely in need of an upgrade. So I think we should probably start off with some questions for MSC, who I think are obviously driving this, and perhaps start off by explaining what a bill of lading actually is, how it differs from an EBL, an electronic bill of lading, and what are the advantages of the electronic bill of lading. Andre, do you want to answer those?
Certainly. Well, I think it's very easy. I can compare it to many other operations we do as consumers. Take an airline ticket, for example. You used to have a paper document, and that was the easy part, which you got from the travel agent. And when you had to change the flight, I don't know if you remember, for the older ones in this call, they had to put a little sticker, which was just a piece of paper, and then write the new flight. But you had to go to the travel agency to do that. You couldn't do it yourself. And then, of course, you had to present that on each flight, and they would take a piece off, put it into the system, eventually print a manifest for the plane to be able to take off. So bill of lading, same story. We have to produce that document, which is essentially a title of property, and that document circulates around the world, and it goes through many hands before it reaches the destination, where most of the time it's required as a document to prove the title of the goods. So of course that creates that can create a lot of issues with delays, fraud, of course, or even documents never arriving, as we discussed the other day with Fabian and Fabio. And the electronic bill of lading is just the same as paying with a credit card rather than having to send that original note around the world. And we feel that this is something which can really help the supply chain to be more efficient. And I'm sure our colleagues from BRF will have something to say to that. So essentially, it's a question of speed, getting the document across in minutes rather than days, cost, of course, efficiency, and security. Because, of course, a document that is in the blockchain is much more difficult, at least for the moment, to fraud than a paper document. I think it's an easy story.
And so, when you're making your choice about how to take this forward, why did you choose Wave BL as your partner, as that use their platform?
Well, I think, to be very honest, what we found interesting was that Wave was using a decentralized technology. So without going into the details, that's more on Gadi's side. But we were not going to put all our data and documents in a centralized platform. That was something that attracted us a lot because we have control over the information in the documents. And also the fact that the way Wave is set up, it's essentially a network rather than a platform, meaning that you become a member of the network and you then have access to the various partners. And so we found that also a much more open solution. And lastly, the fact that we could essentially place any kind of document. So we're not limited to the bill of lading. And of course, we thought with the teams that this was the future rather than focusing on a solution which only allows bills of lading. Now, that having been said, of course, the discussion is now around interoperability. How do we get these systems to talk to each other so we can satisfy the customer base?
Yeah, interesting. So how your customers reacted so far, and what are the benefits that it brings the shippers themselves and the receivers?
Well, I think that's a question we should ask the customers since we're on this panel. Obviously, they think it's fantastic. They think it's a great solution for them, and probably gives them more control over at least the movement and the receipt of the goods. But I think they should answer the question.
Okay, well, we'll come on to them shortly, perhaps. I think you've introduced the idea of the blockchain. I'm sure there are some people in the audience who don't fully understand what blockchains are. We don't necessarily need to go into the detail, as you said, other than that it's a very secure method. But for Gadi,
yes.
How does the platform work for parties to transfer the bill of lading electronically? How do they actually go about doing this?
Sure. So basically, when we established Wave, we had a few guidelines. One of the guidelines was that international trade is made up for so many different industries between the ocean carriers, which are, of course, the most important part, but buyers and sellers, which are, for example, as large as BRF and sometimes very small, the banking industry, government agencies from all around. So one of the main guidelines that we understood quite immediately is don't change anything, which means that make it very simple and very straightforward and keep the process identical to how it is today, which means that if we follow the guidelines of paper and we don't try to make a perfect product, but make a product which is good enough and keep the status quo and the balance of powers between the different trade participants, so at least no one will get too upset so that adoption will not be harmed, because you do need multiple participants from multiple industries, from multiple jurisdictions for every transaction. So we have created it identical to paper, and we have basically positioned all the technology and all the blockchain and everything behind the scenes. From the user perspective, it's just like sending an email. And it looks and it feels like an email. And in order to give some picture for the audience in their mind, and you see already Fabiano and Fabio are nodding, it looks like an email. Just on every attachment, it tells you whether you have an original or non-original, and which just like in paper, by the way, whether you have the original so you know, or you have a photocopy, and then you automatically understand that you don't have the original. And it also gives you the status, the legal status, which of course we will not bore the audience what is the difference between consignee, endorsee, bearer, bills of lading, etc. But all the rules of the title transfer and the transfer of rights and liabilities is identical in Wave, just like everything else. So in in one sentence, to summarize, it's identical to paper. And I believe that, by the way, it's not just Wave. This is where the industry is heading, not to overcomplicate things, not to reinvent trade. Trade is big enough. So let's keep things simple in order to promote adoption.
And it uses blockchain, presumably because of the security aspects and the ability to share amongst registered users.
Blockchain in general, other than being an excellent buzzword that everyone likes to discuss all the time, it brings you actually the ability to mirror how paper works. It is naturally a very secure technology because it uses very strong fundamental, I would say, components like electronic signatures, etc. However, there are many other secure technologies and many other very secure databases. But what makes the blockchain unique is the ability to share or to provide the user full control over its documents in our case, or anything else, or any other token in other cases. So full control, full privacy, which is essential, because just like BRF doesn't want, or MSC or anyone else doesn't want the entire world to be able to hack to some database and see all their business connections, because this is very sensitive information. So actually, it is secure, but we used it because it is decentralized, not because it is secure. So every participant is a node in the network. Every participant has full control. Some of them can use us to host the service for them in order to have very quick onboarding, but very large players can also install it on premise in order to gain both the security and the privacy. And security, privacy, and control are actually extremely connected also to the value proposition of paper. When you hold a piece of paper, you have full control. You put it in your pocket, no one knows what is written there, where it is, and no one can take it from you other than physically taking it from you. But we leave that for another panel. So the blockchain actually allows us to mirror paper without any compromises, and this is why we are using it.
Okay, thank you. That's good. So,
by the way, I'm sorry for giving every answer 45 minutes and then summarizing it in a sentence.
No, it's fine. Well, if I can understand it, I hope a lot of the audience can too. So I think this is very useful. So for new customers who want to start using your platform and to start using EBLs, what do they do?
First of all, they need to have the will, or better say, they need to understand that we are not in a pilot mode anymore, which means that today, MSC is issuing thousands of bills of lading, and of course MSC is here on the audience, but actually one of the things that MSC realized is that it's a network thing. So they're actually even helping to bring their competitors on board. In order to digitize trade, you need to bring a very large network. So currently the onboarding to Wave, and I assume that also to some of our competitors, it's very simple and very straightforward. You onboard, it takes you 20 minutes end to end, including the training. So you can join through MSC's site or contact their agencies, they will assist. Also on our site. It's very simple and very straightforward. You also need to onboard your counterparts, which means that if I'm working with my vendor, I will need to onboard him as well. Currently, we have very good success rate, which means that there's hardly any churn, which means that it's very easy to onboard, and the value proposition is very easy because you just digitize paper. It's very easy to understand why paper is less efficient than email, for example. Same thing for electronic bills of lading.
So if a shipper has, say, 500 consignees, they need to get all 500 consignees on board to use the system if they want to start using EBLs to them.
First of all, the carriers are extremely helpful, and this is something worth noting. The maritime shipping industry, which are considered, even in the statement in the beginning of the panel, we mentioned that shipping is still using paper. It's not shipping, it's trade, and this is the only solution. Shipping is actually the industry which is pushing the adoption and pushing digitization for sake of the entire industry. So the shipping companies, or ocean carriers, better say, they will be extremely helpful when it comes to the onboarding. So what you will need to do is only tell them basically which partners you want to onboard first and which later. They will assist in most cases. We will assist as well. But some participants also want to keep full privacy, so they do it by themselves. In general, yes, you need everyone to be on the network, but it's not just for electronic bill of lading. Also, I cannot send you an email if you don't have an email account. So every digital platform will require the onboarding of the network. It's not something unique. And I'm sure that the exact same question would have been 14 years ago in a panel about new technologies such as email or anything else. But because it's easy, so you do need to onboard your consignees, but it's a network, so there is a good chance also that they will be onboarded by someone else, which is also working with them. Yeah. This is what the industry is doing these days, and the shipping companies are actually the main industry that ensure that this happens, and happens very fast also.
Okay, and just thinking about the context of this meeting about fresh produce and frozen produce, I mean, how does it benefit those shippers, and what are the criteria for the fresh produce industry as far as EBLs are concerned?
I think that it's better to hear maybe from Fabio or Fabiano. Of course.
Yes, yeah, for sure. We have a lot of benefits with this new solution, because first, we reduce the risk of losing original paper. And everybody knows how is the problem, how big is the problem when we lose an original bill of lading. It's not quite easy to get a new original bill of lading issue. And another point is that we have an efficient and faster way to send the documents. Now we have some difficulties when we look on the transit time of the vessels, for example. We see that the vessels are faster and faster day by day. But when you look into the documentation flow, you don't see the same improvement. And you have some destination where you deliver documents after the container be discharged. And this is a problem, because you're gonna have the merge cost, storage, plugging, and this reflects in a negative points in your profitability of your business. So we need to find for yesterday this as a digital solution for that. I can say that we experienced some shipments with MSC and Wave platform to Singapore, and the experience was surprisingly good. We sent the documents in few minutes. We sent the documents in a few minutes instead of 5 days. So this was amazing. And as Gadi just said, we have the opportunity to send not only the EBL, but other documents like invoice, packing list, certificate of origin. You can create easily a folder, call it the unique folder, to separate the other original shipping documents. So it's very, very nice, fantastic.
Yeah, well, your smile, I think, tells a very strong message that you're very pleased with this development. And clearly, for all the reasons that we can imagine, getting paperwork before the cargo arrives is particularly important with fresh produce, of course. So What about during the pandemic, Fabiano? What have you found the advantages of this electronic bill of lading as opposed to paperwork?
Yeah, this I think that this is what we would have before the pandemic already. The pandemic has increased the aiming for a digital process for sure, especially for the countries where the lockdowns were taking place for several days, months, sometimes. And internally, we experienced a big upheaval in our daily tasks as well. With skeleton crew working in the office, changing all the flow of the process, trying to overcome and struggling against the time every moment. So for BRF is not different. We have invested, as we talked before with Fabio, even more in a digital transformation to automate our process internally and externally in order to mitigate situations like the pandemic, for example. And the EBL and the digital platform makes all the difference in this situation.
Yeah.
You know,
So
Mark,
it sounds like sorry.
No, I wanted to add something nice about the pandemic, because everyone is working from home and you cannot process original documents which are sitting on your office desk when you're at home. This is something which is very understandable. So we have actually a very large chemical, one of the network participants is a very large chemicals producer, which is of course also sourcing. He's actually not in the containers, he's in the bulkers and tankers shipment. And one of the import managers opened up a courier account, so all the documents are delivered to her home. So she's bringing $20 million worth of bills of lading to her house on a monthly basis. And this is how trade works today. Now, again, there's just no other solution other than now. And this too, just to reflect of trade today, because there was no other solution, is extremely extremely inefficient. The pandemic actually helped a lot because one of the problems in the B2B world is that if it ain't broken, don't fix it. Now it became broken. So suddenly there is a massive boost to digitization. This is why we can reach such an openness in different managements around the world. Of course, the pros will last after, but the pandemic have pointed out the need dramatically. Sorry for barging in, of course.
No, well, I was going to say, I think the answer is extremely. I think perhaps the only thing I could possibly add is that now you've experienced the benefits of it and seen the benefits during the pandemic, or at least what would have been benefits. It must be very frustrating not to be able to just roll this out very quickly across all of your transactions, because there are going to be time limits. I think we're going to come on to that, I think, is further in the discussion. But those I think are very interesting points. Perhaps if I can just turn to Thomas. Just looking at the standards the DCSA has been generating for this, can you just give us a little bit of a background on the standards and how these were arrived at?
Yeah, naturally. Yeah, we started the discussions around what we call digital trade back in 2019, actually pre-pandemic. But as was mentioned before, the conversations were really accelerated in Q1 of 2020. So that's where we really sort of started working on it. We heard from many of the participants in trade that certainly during the first months of the pandemic, where there was a lockdown, it was very specific teams that were allowed in the banks to come in the trade finance departments to actually work on the letters of credit process and produce all the paperwork that needs to get done. So I certainly also see that the pandemic has been part of accelerating the switch to digital here, and that's really good. But back to how we originated at the standards, what we did was we brought all the 9 members together, and so what we've come up with as a first standard was the Bill of Lading standard, which was published in December of last year. And now the team is working its way backwards towards booking. So we will have booking API, and of course the information provided in the booking API will then flow into the bill of lading. So little by little we are sort of expanding. We're going from the very critical document, and then we are sort of expanding out in the process. So I think the next publications are due here in either Q1 or Q2 of next year.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Obviously adding on additional features, but I mean, to the extent that standardization is obviously going to be very important, because I guess the current bills of lading are fairly standard in their format around the world. Is there a strong consensus about what the standard should be, or is there still work to be done on that?
No, I mean the 9 carriers have already agreed on the standard bill of lading, so that was what we published in December last year. To be quite honest, I think you're right that when we compared them, there was of course a large agreement on many parts of the bill of lading, but one thing is what's on the front page of the bill of lading. The other stuff is what's on the backside, the contract of carriage and the terms and conditions and so on. So that there's certainly a lot of work that needs to be done, but largely standardized is not the same as standardized, and there's a big difference if you want interoperability. If you want, that's what's interesting about standards, is that they're critical for creating choice. And when you have things that are interoperable, you can actually choose between different solutions. And to the point that was made before, you also, what we are aiming to do is we would aim to have, a choice between platforms, or have interoperability between the platforms.
And okay, so there's obviously a cost to sending paper bills of lading around the world, apart from the challenges that they present. What do you estimate as being the cost advantages of moving to electronic bills of lading?
Well, I think again, I would venture an opinion, but I really think that needs to be validated by both Fabio and Fabiano, because they are the customers here, so they can speak much more accurately to it. But certainly from our side, then I'll take the head of Andre on and the rest of our members. There's a huge benefit for just starting to get data quality improved, and as you get straight through processing, which will be enabled by the full digitalization of the process, we will start to see much higher accuracy in terms of getting our documents correct. We'll start to see much more automation of the process, just like we've seen in banking. I think most of the people on this panel have been in a bank where we've been at a counter where we had to write down on carbon paper, who we wanted to transfer the money to, or how much we wanted to, deposit or withdraw on our accounts. And you would walk over with the piece of paper and ask the teller, and they would then key it into the system. So it's just doing twice the work. Today we're sitting at home and doing transfers, using online platforms. And I don't, just transferring that analogy to international trade. Why wouldn't we do the same thing? Why wouldn't we have the customers, when they already provide the shipping instructions or the elements that need to go on a bill of lading? Why wouldn't we start populating letters of credit? Why wouldn't we start populating promissory notes or bills of exchange and packing lists and so on? I think there's a huge opportunity for doing things smarter, better quality, less manual work, less rework, and then add all the speed, that Fabiano talked about. You get it instantly instead of waiting days, and you don't have to send it around the world. And when we send things around the world, we all know that there's an environmental impact as well. So it's it's hard to find reasons why we wouldn't just accelerate this as much as we can.
So Fabiano, what do you think is the cost of a paper EBL? Sorry, a bill of lading, a paper bill of lading, compared to an electronic one?
Yeah, I believe there is one important point here is that we cannot only consider the cost or not of this process, but think bigger on this process as a whole. We need to consider something that is invaluable in this process. We need to think also in our customer satisfaction, and there are some costs that we cannot even estimate. For example, if we lost some set of documents today, my client, of course, will be angry in the other side. How can I estimate this? My client, we are a B2B company, also has contracts with his clients, and of course, this will be broken. So this, in my opinion, this is the first idea we need to give when we start thinking in blockchain. Of course, we need to consider also the security of the process in a secure platform. But I think more talking about the costs of the documents, I would like to invite Fabiano to speak. He's the business owner of this matter. Fabiano, please add your comments there.
Yeah, for sure. I think that is a whole package. We cannot think only about costs, but the main thing that we need to think about is that we need to improve and to make the international trade smoothly for both sides, for everyone, and to make it easy, reduce the bureaucracy for all the parts. And I think that the reduce of the costs will be the consequence of this new role. So, but for sure, we have a huge opportunity for the exporters and the importers to reduce their costs with the EBL. And for sure, when we talk about the full set of documents, so we have more costs involved that will be saved for the companies.
I'd be happy to give you some numbers from the industry if you are interested. So, first of all, just to understand how it works today. So, the shipper will give the container to Andre's team, if we can refer to it like that, more or less. And then his team will onboard it on a ship. Then in return, they will issue the bill of lading. So the shipper or his freight forwarder will need to drive to the port, pick up the document, and go back to the office. Then in the office, he will add all other documents, and then he will present it to the bank. The bank will check the documents. By the way, the bank will be allowed for 5 days to process these documents because they need to transport it internally, etc. Now, then, of course, the bank will find a mistake because on the bill of lading, there will be mentioned 57 cartons, and in the invoice, it will be 58 cartons. Now, we just don't know which one is right. So you start from the beginning. So you send the driver to the bank, go back, then go to the carrier, get a new one. Then you will need to send it to the buyer's bank, which is sitting across the ocean. He will find another mistake, and then you will ship it back. So this is how it works today. This one, on average, it takes 14 days. It's very hard to quantify how much time. Everyone is saying that time is money, but it's just a statement. It's very hard to actually quantify it, but it is annoying. However, on average, on the freight forwarders, they will save around between 15 to sometimes even $100 just for all these domestic and international couriers. The shipper will add another between $15 to $70 because he has slightly less exchanges. Then the bank, of course, will charge the customer. So this is an additional fees. On average, it will be anywhere between $100 when banks are not involved and up to $350 just on the direct cost, not including the time, not including the risk of losing a bill of lading, which requires a bank guarantee of up to 6 times the amount of goods in transport, which is valid for 1 year. So this is a huge pain for the liquidity.
And,
so the savings
sorry to interrupt you, but only to add another point. Gadi is talking about a normal process without problems. But when
the happy flow.
Yeah, because if you have an error in some information on the bill of lading, of course, we have more one cost for the correction of this document. Or sometimes you have the cost for the correction of the document, and more one cost for the reissuance of this document.
And representation of the documents.
And the representation of this document.
But if I may, I think, you know, when we talk about digitalization, we're talking about also, you know, not outsourcing, but that the process is happening with the customer directly to the shipping line. So making a booking, presenting a shipping instruction. Now we offer also, you know, draft bill of ladings that can be approved or modified online, which saves also the costs of correcting the documents. And then we print a piece of paper. So this is where the disconnect is, and that's why it's only logical that from that process we follow on and we produce an electronic document the same way as when you're booking a flight. And as you said, that's when everything goes well.
Indeed.
Do you have any idea how many bills of lading are issued a year by the total shipping industry? It's probably a difficult question to answer, but
I think Thomas has some ideas from the statistics, probably.
Yeah, as I recall it, it's about, well, there are many parts of shipping that use bill of lading, but if we look at the container industry, I believe it's around 40 million or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
The UN have actually calculated that the final consumer price, once you digitize and streamline the documents in trade, can be reduced by around 3%. And that trade will be dramatically bigger, which means that we are talking about a major impact. It's not just a matter of saving a courier envelope. We are talking about a complete streamlining of 1/3 of the world GDP, which is international trade. It's a complete game changer to how business is done, which is going to directly affect all of our lives, not only as people who are a part of shipping. Yes, our lives are going to be much better. When I say shipping, by the way, I mean the bigger picture, the buyers, the sellers, and everyone else. It's going to affect practically the cost of living for everyone, because, of course, everything is based on trade.
yeah. So I mean, like, just taking your 40 million moves, you're looking about $5-10 billion probably in savings if you go to an EBL. I mean, could be that magnitude. Thinking of all the other things that Fabiano and Fabio have been mentioning about the things that go wrong and the costs of solving them. I mean,
I think, Mark, if I may add, I mean, one thing is the bill of lading, but the UK Law Commission is right now doing some work to allow for the electronic transfer of documents, and they've estimated that there's more than 4 billion documents that are involved in the handling of international trade. So one thing is, of course, the bill of lading, and as interesting as that is, then that is just an order of magnitude. I mean, we know that there are 25, 30, 35, 40 pieces of documents that are required to make international trade happen, depending on jurisdictions, and it's the multiplier effect of all that that's really the potential of what we're talking about here.
yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah,
just to let you know, there are some questions in the Q&A tab.
All right, thank you for that, Annalise. Yep. No, I was just going to when I first started in the business, a depot would write down the container number when it came into the gate. They would then type that onto a telex. The telex would come in. It would go to the systems people who'd entered into the computer. In our office, controlling it, we would then have little cards we put on a board, each time copying the number again and again. Of course, we had about 1 in 15 numbers were errors. So you can imagine, hundreds of thousands of containers coming in and out of depots every day. It was a huge pain. Anyway, this is a good example of how to solve that. So with Annalise's advice that we're coming into the question time, and we've got some questions coming out, I'm just looking if any more points here we should look at. I think perhaps one of the things that I'm certainly interested in is, I have a sense that, like a lot of digital adoption in the world, that this may happen much more quickly than perhaps we're predicting. I think the impression I get is that it's maybe a 2030 to 2035 rollout before it's complete. But just the argument seems so compelling towards it, and that once different countries become accustomed to this, and the banks and the other government agencies and all the other people involved start accepting this, that it will actually become an avalanche, that we'll see a very rapid change. Maybe I'm being too optimistic, but it seems so compelling in the chilled produce sector and in the dry cargo sector. Is there any sense of being optimistic, or is that perhaps something we should temper the feeling towards?
Definitely be optimistic.
Yeah, I think there's reasons to be optimistic. I mean, it would certainly help. That's at least our point of view, that if jurisdictions were quicker to allow for the electronic exchange of documents, and create a legal framework for that. That's our view. But so that's one thing. But we can compare ourselves different points in time. Naturally, we are 15 years beyond that. But IATA started their rollout of the e-airway bill in 2005, and they've made it to around 80% now. It dipped a bit during the COVID crisis, obviously, but they aim to complete next year and get to 100%. But that's then still been a 15-year journey. So I think we should be optimistic, and I think we can also, at least that's my personal ambition, that it will be done faster because we are 15 years on. But it is complex, and one should not forget that.
Yeah,
if I can add to that, sorry, Mark, and thank you, Thomas, is that, I think one of the difficulties in the beginning was to get the approval from the P&I clubs from an insurance perspective. And that actually happened very quickly. So, we tend to say that legal ventures take a long time, but here we have an example of where it made so much sense that there was a very, very quick approval. And I think that demonstrates that it's feasible.
So perhaps the banks, obviously, as you mentioned, they're part of the process. That's obviously very time-consuming for them. Banks have been very focused on cutting costs out in recent years, so they would presumably be early adopters. But perhaps government agencies in some countries may become the biggest obstacle, I guess.
Sure, and there's a business model around all those processes too, to put it in a politically correct way.
My wife has a business importing and exporting stuff from the Philippines, so we know about customs situations there and what's required to get your goods moving quickly sometimes.
So
good. Well, look, well, we can have some closing remarks, but let me just nip into the Q&A session. We have a couple of questions. Francisco Hirgak-Schön again, Maxella Latam. Okay, he's saying, if my memory doesn't fail me, English law does not recognize endorsement, delivery, or other transfer of a bill of lading, a seaway bill, or a ship's delivery order by way of an electronic system, and therefore an EBL does not have the same function as a conventional bill of lading. Where does the law stand globally? That may be an offline question, but anyway, I ask it anyway.
I'll be happy to. In very high level, this is one of the common misunderstandings in the industry today. He is 100% correct. The English law does not recognize it. By the way, they are working on it as we speak, which means that it's in the process. However, the way to solve such a barrier is through a contractual obligations, which mean that you join one of the services, you will sign that you agree. In very simple terms, you will actually agree that even though the law does not recognize electronic bills of lading and endorsements and surrender and everything else as binding from the law perspective, all laws, all jurisdictions around the world are accepting contractual obligations, and you just commit to follow the rules for paper in an electronic manner. This is as simple as that, which means that as long as you commit to follow the same rules of transfer of rights and liabilities. This is basically the endorsement of transferring the rights and liabilities. If you commit that you follow the same rules as paper in electronic world, there should not be any problem. One of the challenges actually is that an electronic bill of lading was never tested by court. And this is just maybe because everything is working very well, but this creates some gray areas and lack of awareness. In practice, putting aside even all other shipping lines, today MSC is issuing electronic bills of lading all around, not all around the world, but in many jurisdictions that you might expect that will not accept bills of lading, electronic bills of lading. Everything works perfectly. Even customs in many jurisdictions are supporting of this process. It is also handled by the carriers themselves, and there is absolutely no barriers. And this is the biggest takeaway that I'll be happy if the audience will understand. Of course, I will appreciate if they choose Wave, but also if they take the other solutions, eventually you can use electronic documents all around the world and for all your processes. Banks can accept it. Customs, they might not be in the process because they have the single window applications already. And of course, we have a very large vendor in Brazil, which is considered to be a relatively paper-oriented country. And as you see, they tested, everything works perfectly. They did, and now they will also expand their operation, which means that they are very active in this world.
Yeah, and in fact, of course, it could be, well, it might be the simple fact that sooner or later there'll be a fraud case or there'll be some dispute, and it will get tested in court in exactly the same way that paper bills of lading get challenged in court, I guess.
Of course, happens all the time.
And English law is modifiable and flexible, so I'm sure it will adapt to this as well. Another question from Alex von Stempel, who I think you all know. He says there are indications, certainly in the UK, that supply chain fraud is on the increase, especially when it comes to falsification of customs declarations. This is probably not limited to the UK. I'm sure it's a global issue. How would you react to that in terms of this? I know we talked a little bit about the security of the system earlier on. Any further comments on this?
Honestly, look, I'm not, thanks for the question, Alex, but I'm not obviously a lawyer, but I think that, falsification of customs declaration has nothing to do with it being digital or not. And I think if that's the question Alex is asking, because we have the issue as a carrier. If you say, when you load a container on a ship and you create a bill of lading, we always have a clause that says, set to contain, because we believe that's what the shipper has put in the container. So I think for me, it's the same perspective in terms of if you declare wrongly to customs, then you declare wrongly whether it's paper or digital, at least from my perspective. But I think that if there's a better control over the full data chain, let's say, from the beginning, then perhaps there's, this could alleviate the fraud. Again, I'm not sure. That's just my opinion.
It would certainly seem that there were less opportunities to alter electronic bill of lading. I mean, a paper document, it's relatively, I'm not an expert on fraud, I have to say on fraud, but certainly I'm sure it's quite easy to alter a paper document, whereas it's very difficult to alter an electronic document if it's in a secure encrypted system.
100% correct. Everyone would be extremely surprised, but fraud existed is also in the paper world.
Exactly.
Indeed.
So, we don't have any more questions coming in from the audience. Would the panel like to offer any final words on this session? I personally, I found it very interesting, very exciting, and actually, I'd like to be an optimist, but I don't have to actually do the implementation. So, what would you like to say as closing remarks?
Wow.
Guide us on the
well, again,
on the order.
You're in the middle of the screen at the top, so I mean, if we take it.
Yeah. By the way, it's negotiable.
Yeah,
so
Gadi, you start. You're top left. Yeah.
Sure. So as I mentioned before, I would say that the biggest takeaway that the audience, or I hope that the audience will take, is that it's here and now. It's not science fiction. It's not a pilot. It's not in the future. Thousands of shipments are being traveled in a much more efficient way. Customers are reporting enormous savings in direct costs, and peace of mind regarding the challenges of using paper, which are not direct costs. And the audience should just check and test it. It's really easy, it's really fast, and the impact is practically immediate. Now, as for being optimistic, when the technology is right, it moves and it spreads like fire. When the technology is wrong, it moves very slowly, and you can see it in every other technology that you are seeing. And hopefully, the technology is right now, and this is how it feels currently regarding the adoption.
Andre.
Yes.
Well, sorry, Fabio.
Sorry, no, go ahead.
No, look, I think you're the ones that are the better, in a better position to comment on the benefits. I think from our perspective, digitalization is a journey. The idea behind that is, of course, to please our customers, but it's also to help us become more efficient. And I think the bill of lading is definitely a good story. Let's not forget, we started e-commerce in our industry in the year 2000, roughly 2001. And we didn't get very far. We were doing the same things for 20 years. So I think now we've come to a step where we need to progress this much faster, because in the end, everybody benefits. And I think the fact that we're collaborating, the fact that we're bringing in partners and doing this job together, with DCSA, with Thomas and the teams, I think really demonstrates that that we're doing this for the greater good. So I can tell you, I'll continue to punch it in and day out.
So Thomas, you MSC have been taking the lead on this. Do you see other big lines following very, very quickly?
Yeah, thankfully it's not only MSC that's taking the lead. There's a number of the other big container lines. I think it's probably the norm rather than the exception that everybody's working towards e-bill of lading now. But I think, as a closing comment for me, I would say that it's important to remember that it's a journey, and there will be bumps along the way. There will be bumps both from a technology point of view, from a legislative point of view, from an interoperability point of view, and therefore also from a customer experience point of view. But we are not going to get anywhere if we don't start. I think that was what Henry Ford said, something around that if you don't change anything, you need to expect the same outcome, right? So let's try and get moving on this.
Fabio and Fabiano, what would you like to add?
Well, okay, I will go. So actually, I'm a technology enthusiast, so I'm a kind of suspect to talk about this, but my dream is, of course, to eliminate the paper from the trade, the international trade. We are evolving at an overwhelming speed in many sectors, and we continue to treat the bureaucratic part of our foreign trade operation as we did about 50 years ago, with papers, handwritten signatures, agency stamps, and while many other sectors are evolving considerably. So in my opinion, the EBL is an important milestone for this challenging blockchain journey. Okay, is a step. We need to give the first step, of course. When we talk blockchain, the word chain means many other agents involved, but we need to start. We need to, and as much as we could get all these entities on board, sooner we will evidence the benefits and also put pressure on other agents and also achieve a complete paperless process for the international trade. That it's one of our main goals, let's say. To finish, I think another important consideration to be done regarding the platform, our pilot tests were surprisingly good. The system is very friendly overall, very intuitive, secure, and efficient. And we also encourage all of you to try this, to to try this nice experience that we had with MSC and Wave BL. So more people embarking on it, sooner we will get in our goal at the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fabio. Fabiano.
Yeah, no cap about Fabio's speech. Actually, this is what we need. We need to invite everybody to be on board of this initiative, and this is for sure an important milestone for an international trade. And as much as we could get all people involved, all entities involved in a digital process, for sure this will be changed in a short time, and we will be able to see a lot of opportunities to have an efficient and smoothly process for everyone. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you. Well, for my side as a moderator, it's been a privilege to have had this leading panel here, people who are very much at the cutting edge of this initiative, MSC, Gadi's Wave company, DCSA, and of course PRF, who've been courageous to embark on this. So it's been a real privilege to actually listen to your story and be part of promoting it. Good. So no more questions from the audience. So Annalise, if you're ready to take over.
Absolutely, gentlemen. Thank you so much for that very interesting panel. I shamefully still have a paper diary, so I clearly have some catching up to do. But I would like, if we could give you a virtual round of applause, we are doing so at the moment. Thank you so much. That was very, very valuable. So that is now a wrap for Cool Logistics Global 2021. Just before I say goodbye, there are a few people I need to thank. Our sponsors and exhibitors, old and new. Some of you have supported us for many years, and you've trusted us to take you into the world of virtual events. You continue to support us through the last 2 years of Cool being online, and for that we are very, very grateful. Thank you to our speakers and moderators. You share your time, sometimes very last minute, and expertise so generously with us. And you are the reason that Cool Logistics is known for providing high-level content, debate, and discussions. So thank you. Thank you to our audience. Some of you have sat and watched for 3 days from homes or offices. Some of you will be watching this on demand, but you all play your part in this wonderful event. So thank you. And finally, a thank you to the Cool team. Helen, Esther, Rachel, Sheena, and Anne. We've been on a journey together, but we threw ourselves into the digital world. And we've learned a lot together, primarily probably that we're all ready to get back to real life events. But we did it together, and I feel very proud to be part of that. So thank you. And a very quick shout out to our partners and children at home who have been banned from the broadband for 3 days. You'll probably hear my son's squeals of delight when I tell him he can get back on his Xbox in the next 5 minutes. So that all that remains to be said then is we are really looking forward to 2022. Cool will be traveling the world from the Middle East in the spring, probably still virtually, but still, then to Rotterdam in early summer, and as you all heard earlier on, then to Barcelona in the autumn. We can't wait to see you, really, really we can't. But in the meantime, stay safe, please keep in touch, and thank you for being part of our Cool community. Goodbye everyone, thank you.